Okay, welcome to the Tiger Minor Report YouTube channel, and we're discussing today our GM candidates for possible replacement for Avila. Now, this is something that we wanted to bring up. There's no, as Chris Mikowski reported in the Detroit News, there's no concrete plan of doing that, but I know that a lot of the fans recently with the Tigers' struggles were upset and they want change, the fire Avila thing, and that's something that's probably not going to happen. But however, Chris, as we are people who do research and we love baseball, started to see some of the candidates that are out there in case something does happen. And so today we're going to go over.
We got a handful of candidates, I would say.
Yeah. We have a handful of candidates that we want to discuss and that we like. And just based off, there's an article coming out here on MotorCityBengals.com you can check out too. But for our Patreon people, this is something, just a little extra bonus content for you that we were working on in terms of also, please check out our upcoming 2016 draft piece that'll be coming out too on our YouTube channel. So without further ado, let's go with the first candidate. The first candidate I wanted to bring up as a possible replacement down the line for the Tigers, Dana Brown, who is the vice president of the Atlanta Braves. It's interesting. His background is really fascinating because he was a minor league player for the Phillies and he kind of worked his way up. But his track record is pretty impressive. He's followed Alex Anthopoulos all around in his time in Toronto and now in Atlanta. It's really because of his track record of identifying talent. And you look at where he's drafted prior to joining the Blue Jays, before following Alex down to Atlanta. This is a guy who really helped. I mean, he helped Toronto get to the 2015 AL East Division Championship. He scouted those players that were part of that draft. He was the director of scouting for the Expos and then later became the Nationals from 2002 to 2009. That's an impressive roster. 40 major league players came out of that, 7 All-Stars. He's familiar with the East Coast, which is the Detroit Tigers do a lot of East Coast scouting. We've talked about this before with their ties New York, lately in the Carolinas as well. Before he joined that, he started his scouting career with the Pittsburgh Pirates in 1994. He was the East Coast scouting coordinator for 8 years before he joined the Expos. So he went to Seton Hall.
Yeah, and so he's a guy who would be coming more from the scouting background as a scouting director, and that's not necessarily a bad thing for the Tigers. You know, we always complain about their inability to scout and develop talent in the draft, and that's, the Braves have been doing that for years and years and years, and it's continued under him. So he's definitely an interesting candidate for sure. I think, one of the tough things about discussing general manager candidates is it's hard to know who's good at the job until they actually have the job. And guys who are good general managers, they don't often lose their jobs. They stick around for a long time. And there's like two schools of thought. It seems like there are people, general managers or vice presidents, who like to surround themselves with a lot of really smart potential GMs down the road. And there are other people who kind of surround themselves with just people they trust and they've worked with for a long time who might not necessarily be general manager material. I think I would probably put Dombrowski in the latter category. I don't, they brought in Dave Littlefield or whatever. I don't know if it was Avila or Dombrowski, but he's a former general manager and kind of infamously bad at it. So that's the guy you bring on. He's got some experience. You don't necessarily worry about him taking your job. And we should also be clear, like, I don't know, we have no personal animus toward Avila. We're not here starting the fire Avila chants or waving the flags or anything like that. It's just, it's a results-based business, and he's had the job for several years, and it's been some of the worst baseball you'll ever see. And at a certain point, you just kind of have to move on. So, with all that said, my dream candidate would be Theo Epstein, because of course he's ended 2 extended curses in baseball, and the Tigers are getting up there. We're at close to 40 years without a World Series ring. It's not as bad as Cleveland, for instance, but you assume that at this point Theo Epstein probably doesn't want to. I mean, he's at the point where he could probably name his price, name whatever. Maybe he wants to be an owner. But failing that, you could always bring in Jason McLeod, who's kind of a guy who's been named as a potential GM for years now. He was part of like a 3-headed monster there with the Cubs, with Epstein and Jed Hoyer, and yeah, he's got an extended career. He was around for with the Red Sox with Epstein back when they were drafting, Dustin Pedroia and John Lester and all those guys, Clay Buchholz, Jacoby Ellsbury. That a lot of times David Chad gets credit for that. It's always tough to know exactly who's getting credit, but he was there, and then he moved on to the Cubs with the with Epstein, and was there for when they drafted Chris Bryant and Kyle Schwarber and stuff like that. He kind of looks like the actor Robert Forster. I don't know if you remember him. He was a character actor. I think his most prominent role is probably Jackie Brown, but he's kind of got that.
Who I always thought looked like Leonard Nimoy a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. It's kind of got like a tall, dark, rectangular head. But he's a guy who's always brought up as a potential GM candidate. He's interviewed a bunch of times, so he would be, I think, a pretty solid candidate.
Another guy that you and I both agreed on before we even started this conversation was assistant GM in Pittsburgh, Steve Standers, who is comes from Toronto. It's highly regarded. He was the Blue Jays amateur scouting director. And he's a guy that Ben Cherington, the the GM at Pittsburgh, because he's a guy who does a really good job of, when he was in Boston, he developed a really good branch. It's kind of like the NFL with the Bill Parcells tree and the Bill Walsh tree, similar to that. And Cherington's got a pretty good one developing right here. And one of the things I wanted to mention before you discuss him a little bit is, in terms of his experience, it's really where it's an international scouting. And one of the things that the Tigers have been lacking is international players that have come up and been impactful. We beat this to a dead horse a little bit. Soto took a while. Soto was a good pickup in 2012. Anthony Castro is doing well in Toronto. But the Tigers, this Sanders is only...
Yeah, I think he's like 32, maybe 33 at this point.
Yeah.
But he's already got close to like 15 years in baseball, so he's been doing this for a while.
Yeah. I was worried about the whole Randy Smith boy genius thing, but I think it's far different in this case.
Well, yeah. So he's moved up the way that you would expect, and you mentioned he's part of the Cherington tree, which is also part of the Epstein tree. So we're really, these guys have a pretty good track record, and he's now the assistant GM there in Pittsburgh. But yeah, you mentioned it. He was there with the Red Sox when he was really young, and doing amateur and international scouting back when they were getting Rafael Devers and also Rosny Castillo. But wasn't his fault that they gave him $8 billion.
That's true.
I don't think. But he was also there for the drafts of like Michael Chavis and Michael Kopech and Andrew Benintendi. And then, as you mentioned, he moved on to Toronto, where he was ran the 3 drafts there when they got, he took Logan Warmoth in the 2017 draft, who I wanted to take too. And he hasn't worked out. But his next pick was Nate Pearson, who was one of the top pitching prospects in baseball. And then the next year they took Jordan Groshans, who's really promising, and then Alek Manoah. So he's got a strong track record of drafting. And now he's an assistant GM. So it's like, he's probably going to be getting a GM job here in the next couple of years. So why not with the Tigers? Yeah, so he's from LA and went to Northwestern, so he knows the Midwest a little bit. And if he'll go to Pittsburgh, he'll come to Detroit, I think. So I like Pittsburgh. It's a very nice town, but it's not not LA, not Chicago. But you'll come to a place to be a GM. So yeah, I think I think he would probably be my top candidate right now if they were to find somebody. But I suppose there is that worry that he's a boy genius. He's 6 years younger than Miguel Cabrera. Is he going to tell Miguel Cabrera what to do? But he comes highly regarded, so he'd be a guy I'd like.